Welcome to Learn the Word, the daily Bible teaching program of Calvary Chapel of Delta and Pastor Doug McLean. As we continue through Proverbs 20, we see a general theme of what it means to live an honorable life. Here's Pastor Doug to explain in Proverbs 20 and verse 9.
Verse 9. Who can say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin? Who can say it? Well, the answer is anyone can say it. I mean, anyone could say it, but no one really can rightly say it. Anyone can say it, but no one really can rightly say it, because Jeremiah 17, verse 9, Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? See, we're wicked by nature. We by nature are impure sinners. You might be saying, well, I have no sin. 1 John chapter 1, verse 8, 1 John 1:8, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. 1 John 1:10, 1 John 1:10, if we say we have not sinned, we make him a liar and his word is not in us. And so we need to walk in humility and really know that none of us have arrived. And any cleansing we've experienced is a work of the Holy Spirit, a work of his grace. And yes, we should seek to have, as James says, clean hands and a pure heart, James chapter 4, 8-10. But it's the Lord who even gives that desire. It's the Lord that brings that conviction. And if we agree with him, then he brings the cleansing. And it's all by his grace. So here, in the context, it's wonderful because what he's saying really in the context is you got to remember who you were. You got to remember who you are. You got to remember how you've been changed, particularly when you're dealing with others. Because so often we can forget who we were and how God changed us when we're dealing with others. And we start to apply standards to them that are different than the standards that we were under or are under. In fact, look at verse 10. He said, diverse weights and diverse measurements, they are both alike an abomination to the Lord. So it seems like as you read this, that this is about commerce. We've spoken about this before, how they used a balance scale. And here Solomon talking about the importance of consistent standards of measure, that if you're going to be using a system of measures, they need to be consistent, because if they're not, it's an abomination of the Lord. You know, to use a light measure to sell, you know, where you're giving people less for a certain price, they think it's a heavier weight, but it's hollow, you know, and you're giving them less for the same price. And then you have another weight to buy that's actually heavier, and you're getting more for your money. Solomon said that's an abomination because it's an expense to others. It's cheating. It's not fair. It's a lie. And Solomon said that's an abomination of the Lord. And that's true in commerce, but there's a spiritual principle to that as well. Luke 6:38 says it this way, for with the same measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And the tendency of human nature is to go easier on self and heavier on others. To, as Jesus said, to be very adept at finding splinters while ignoring logs. In reality, the reason you can see the splinters is because you're very familiar with the material. So this whole section here, consistent, when we're interacting with others, remember who you were, remember who you are, remember how God changed you, remember how God is changing you. Remember that when you're dealing with others. Verse 11, even a child is known by his deeds, whether what he does is pure and right. Now, even a child is known by his deeds. Now, I've noticed that children are terrible at being hypocrites. You typically can see the reality of their issues, little children. You can see their sins, you can see their attitudes much easier than adults. When a child is unhappy, they let you know it. And when they're happy, they let you know it. They don't put on a show. They learn how to put on a show as time goes on. But initially when they're putting on shows just for fun, many times they're not really even good at putting on shows. But in reality, the way they behave reveals what's going on in their heart. They're just real, not very good actors. So listen, when you see your child's bad behavior, as you're seeing it, before they learn how to act, that's the best time to deal with it and to start ministering to their heart. Don't excuse their bad behavior. And I say that because the world will give you all kinds of excuses for your child, and you as a parent can fail to actually act on what's being revealed because you love them, you want what's best for them. You're readily you're more susceptible to believing the world's philosophy about kids. Look, God gives us kids because they need to be parented, they need to be corrected, they need to be taught. So deal with what you see. Affirm the good, correct the bad, deal with the hard issues. Don't ignore it. Remember Luke 6:43, for a good tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. So pay attention and don't ignore bad behavior or good behavior. And that kind of flows into verse 12. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. Do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes and you will be satisfied with bread. So Solomon's just making this observation that the Lord gave us ears and eyes so that we can receive, and so we can see, so we can take in information, and so we can know what's happening around us and respond. He wants us to be attentive. He created us to be attentive. That's why we have eyes and ears. Now you can look just in his design. He wants us to pay attention, to tune in. And so Solomon says, don't love sleep. Literally, oversleeping can get in the way of productivity. And a person can come up short because they're sleeping too much. But in addition, spiritually, some people are sleeping, not paying attention to things that should be obvious. Some people don't want to deal with reality, so they dream. Ephesians 5:14-16 says this, Ephesians 5:14-16, therefore he says, awake you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. You got to pay attention. And in the context to what's happening in your life, to what's happening in your children's lives, to what's happening in society. You got to pay attention. Verse 14. It is good for nothing, cries the buyer, but when he has gone his way, then he boasts. Look, this is about bargaining. This is about negotiating, haggling for a good price. Solomon pointed out that some people will try to say things to drive a price down. They'll play the game to get the good deal. And, why would I pay that? That's not worth that, and just diminishing the thing so they can get a good deal. And then he said that the same people will walk away and gloat about the price. Oh, look what I got. I got it for this much. And didn't I get a great deal? And so, saying whatever you can say to drive the price down and then bragging about the good deal later. And what he's describing here is reality, but it's really not a good thing because it's not true. If you're boasting about how great it is, then saying it's bad to get the price down is not walking in integrity, is it? And I would say this is what the devil loves to do. He loves to cry out like, hey, don't waste your time in Bible study. And why are you praying anymore? I mean, it's not doing you any good. Don't waste your time going to church. You can do that at home. Why are you wasting your time with that? And he'll try to negotiate with you. He says, look, you're doing all this stuff and it's not doing you any good. And he'll just badger you. And then you're like, oh, I guess you're right. And then he walks away saying, I got him. So be careful. Be careful. Now, in speaking of what is valuable, Solomon wrote in verse 15, he said, there is gold and a multitude of rubies, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. So when people have knowledge, people who really know, who can discern, who have a good perception of reality, when they speak, Solomon said that's a precious jewel, more valuable than gold and rubies. It's superior worth because it's more rare. You can't find it very often. So since we have ears to hear, when we find someone that really knows what they're talking about, we should value what they're saying. Verse 16, take the garment of one who is surety for a stranger and hold it as a pledge when it is for a seductress. I think this is one of the most difficult verses. Take the garment of one who is surety for a stranger and hold it as a pledge when it is for a seductress. Look, to be surety is to guarantee a loan or a debt. We would say to cosign. The idea here is that the debtor and the one who is surety or guaranteeing the debt are treated as one. So the one who is guaranteed the debt of a stranger may lose the shirt off his back because of the behavior of the stranger. The word seductress here is a word that means stranger or alien, and sometimes it's used in the context for a harlot or seductress, like it's translated here, someone enticing someone from the outside. So he's saying that the person who guarantees the debt of an outsider or even a seductress is responsible for them, has to guarantee the payment, has to, whatever lot that person has becomes yours. So if they're enticing, if they're immoral, then it's going to affect you as well. So whoever that person is that you're guaranteeing something, whatever they deserve, whatever they have to pay, whatever they get into, you get sucked in with it because you said, I'll guarantee it. So at first read, it looks like a warning. And I would say it is. You got to be careful. If you're guaranteeing somebody else's debt, you've got to be ready to pay it because you're going to get treated as if you were them. It's an interesting concept spiritually because this is exactly what Jesus did for us. That's what he did for us. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 22, it says it. It says, he has become a surety of a better covenant. Hebrews 7:22. See, Jesus said, I'll guarantee their debt, your debt, my debt. He said, I'll co-sign. I'll guarantee it. I'll take it. It's my pledge. And what happened? He got treated just like we deserve to be treated. He paid what we owed because he chose to stand for us, to be the guarantee for us, to give himself for us. All right. Verse 17. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterward his mouth will be filled with gravel. That sounds yummy. Those who gain personally by deceiving others may enjoy their gain for a while, but only for a season. Remember, Hebrews 11:25 speaks of the passing pleasure of sin. The reason sin is such a snare is because it can bring momentary pleasure, but then the mouthful of gravel comes. And it's interesting. Not only do you want to spit it out, but have you ever been chewing something and it tastes good and then there's something hard in it? And you feel like, did I just break my tooth? Or maybe some of you have. You know, you're like, ooh, ouch, ooh, you know. That's the picture. It might seem good, might taste great, but next thing you know, you're going, what was that? That's sin. It might taste good for a while, but eventually the situation is going to change and not for the better. Verse 18, plans are established by counsel, by wise counsel wage war. So this is a proverb about moving from plans to actual execution and the importance of really thinking through what you're doing. You need to think through what you're doing. It takes humility to ask for counsel, but it's a good thing to ask for counsel. And don't just go from person to person to person until they tell you what you want to hear. You can do that too, that's a problem. But ask people for counsel. Find people that are living with integrity, who are examples of what it means to follow Christ, people that know the word, ask them, and then whatever counsel you receive, take it to the word, because he's the wonderful counselor. But you get grace when you walk in humility, and walking in humility is saying, I might be wrong. I might have missed something. I don't know everything. You know, when you don't think you have to ask anybody for counsel, you've got problems. You're heading for trouble. So learn that. Learn the value of getting counsel. It's very important. Verse 19, he who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with one who flatters with his lips. So a talebearer, great. I mean, just interesting word, talebearer. They're telling tales, just taking stories and delivering them. Usually it's gossip, you know, telling people about others. And talebearers love to share what's happening in everyone else's life. Hey, did you hear about? We really need to pray for them because this is what's happening. That's the Christian way to be a talebearer. Why do people tell tales? Well, it's usually to gain acceptance or to be heard or to be liked or to be accepted or to be esteemed or to elevate self and bring down somebody else. And if you think about it, people that flatter do it for the same reasons. You could take that same list to be accepted, to be heard, to be liked, to be esteemed, to get somebody to listen to them. So here Solomon's giving us a very important revelation that if somebody comes to you and they start flattering you, if somebody has a tendency to flatter, oh, you're the best. You are just the best. You know, you're just the best. I mean, really the best. Then you need to watch out, because the person that has that in their character, where they're a flatterer, is likely to be a talebearer as well. So just caution. They may flatter you to your face and slander you behind your back. So you got to be careful. Verse 20, whoever curses his father or his mother, his lamp will be put out in deep darkness. That's not good. Lamp put out in deep darkness. Now, look, it's human. This is human to give respect to those who deserve respect. I don't respect him. He doesn't respect me. He's not respectable. How can I respect him? Look at the way he behaves. That's human. That's natural. If you love those that love you, what credit is it to you? You know, even sinners do that. Same kind of concept. The Lord teaches us to respect those who have been given positions of authority, whether we think they deserve respect or not, right? We respect a position of authority. And that begins at home. Kids need to learn that at home. Ephesians 6, 1-3. Ephesians 6, 1-3. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. So parents have been appointed to be God's authorities in a child's life, and that's to create lessons that transfer over into the rest of life. So parents are given children to raise, to lead, and children should learn how to respect and honor their father and mother. To curse a father or mother, the word curse there means to value little, or to count them as small, or count them as insignificant, to belittle them or defame them. And those who do, Solomon said, are putting out their own lamp. So they're giving up their testimony, they're giving up revelation, and they're turning out the lights in their life. They're turning off the light. So they bring in confusion and fear. They're hurting themselves. So it's harmful to disrespect and dishonor your parents. Related to that, verse 21, an inheritance gained hastily at the beginning will not be blessed at the end. And we have a story about that. You can write in your Bible, Luke 15, an inheritance gained hastily. Remember, a man had 2 sons. And the one said to his father, I want my inheritance now. I want what falls to me. And the father gave it to him. And having received it, not many days later, he took what he had received and he went to a far country and he wasted it all on prodigal living. Remember? He had to have it now. It didn't turn out very well for him, did it? At least not at first. He came to the end of his plan and realized it was better in the father's house. So that's an illustration of that. But he was a man who cursed his father, who gained for himself but didn't honor his father. And his choice wasn't blessed in the end until he changed his mind, until he came back to his father. Verse 22, do not say, I will recompense evil. Wait for the Lord and he will save you. Remember, vengeance belongs to the Lord. Romans 12:19 says that. Romans 12:19, beloved, do not avenge yourself, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So if you've been wronged, you wait for the Lord. You say, Lord, you take care of it, you deal with it, you give it over to him. Don't try to get even. Don't try to make people pay. That's not our role. Whenever we're doing correction, it's for the sake of the one being corrected. Always remember that. Even when you're dealing with your kids, you're correcting them for their sake. You're not correcting them for your own sake. You're not trying to make them pay, right? You're trying to help them live. Verse 23, diverse weights are an abomination to the Lord and dishonest scales are not good. Very close to verse 10, almost exact. Verse 10 said, diverse weights and measures are an abomination to the Lord. This adds, dishonest scales are not good, not acceptable. So standards have to be equally applied, here emphasized again. Verse 24, a man's steps are of the Lord. How then can a man understand his own way? Now back in Proverbs 16, verse 9, the word said, Proverbs 16:9, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. So people can have all kinds of ideas and all kinds of plans for life, but a man's plans will always subordinate to God's greater plan. So you can have everything worked out of how you want it to work out, and it doesn't work out. Anybody experience that? I mean, all the time. This is the way it's going to, and it doesn't work out. In other words, man doesn't have complete control over his future. Your destiny is not in your own hands. You can't say, this is the way it's going to happen, and no, that's the way it's going to happen. We're not independent of the working of the Lord in our lives. Since that is the case, then a man will not truly understand his own way apart from the Lord. In other words, what Solomon is saying is look to the Lord, who is ultimately over all, who is, as Ephesians 1:11 says, working all things according to the good counsel of his will. So he's working everything together in his plan. If you want to understand your plan, then you have to come to him. You're never going to figure it out apart from him. Verse 25. It's a snare for a man to devote rashly something as holy and afterward to reconsider his vows. Jephthah is a tragic example of that. You can read that in Judges chapter 11, read that later. What Solomon is saying is think before you make commitments. It was Solomon who said in Ecclesiastes 5:4-5, when you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. Better not to vow than to vow and not pay. Okay, so you don't need to make promises to the Lord. You don't have to try to butter God up or make commitments to get God to do things. You don't need to do that. You have to be careful about making promises that you can't keep. Verse 26, a wise king sifts out the wicked and brings the threshing wheel over them. Again, the job of a king, of a government, to stand against wickedness. Threshing wheel, that's not a pretty story. That means to crush. To crush. And the purpose of crushing is to separate and to remove the chaff, the undesirable. Toss it up in the wind, let the chaff blow away. And that's what governments are called to do. Verse 27, the spirit of a man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the inner depths of his heart. So here's Solomon emphasizing that God deals with a man, connects with a man in the very core of his being. God searches deep within the inner depths of his heart. He can see everything. Now, that fact is a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because if you're wicked, that's terrifying. There's nothing you can hide from it. But if you're a person of faith, if you're righteous, it's comforting because he knows exactly who I am when he called me. There's no surprises. He loved me anyway. He forgave me. Verse 28, mercy and truth preserve the king, and by loving kindness he upholds his throne. Interesting, mercy, truth, loving kindness personified as preservers of the king, upholders of his authority. In other words, these are things, Solomon says, that would keep a king in power. These personified virtues, or would keep a king in power. And it's interesting because these things are attributes of the King of Kings. And I would say the best leader understands that he only leads under authority. If all power is given from God, then the best leader understands that he's only operating with delegated authority, conveyed authority. And if you're operating under conveyed authority, then it's incumbent upon you to act in a manner that's consistent with the one who gave you that authority. That's the idea here. Verse 29, the glory of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray head. So the young men are recognized and admired for their strength, and old men should be respected and honored and recognized for their experience. The fact that they made it that far, and the fact that they've been through more things. The older men should be respected. Verse 30, blows that hurt cleanse away evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart. Hebrews 12:11 says this, Hebrews 12:11, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful, and nevertheless afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. And sometimes it hurts, sometimes pain has a purifying effect. I don't know if you've gone through a painful season, whether it's physical, mental, emotional. If you go through a difficult season, maybe it's betrayal, maybe it's persecution, or maybe it's simple things like losing a job, or maybe tragic things like losing somebody you love. Those things that come into your lives can be like blows, and you just feel like you're getting hit. But those things that come against you, the Lord has a way of, he can repurpose those, and he uses them to inspire us to draw closer to the Lord. And as we draw closer to the Lord, then there's a purification that takes place. And so God can take bad things, what Satan means for evil, and turn it around and use it for good. And you know what? Even sometimes listening to the word can fulfill this. I don't know if it's happened to you, but it happens to me sometimes. It's like, ouch, that hurts, but it's good. Just like a surgeon, when they use a scalpel and they cut into you to do surgery, it hurts, but it's for good. Sometimes when we sit before the word, it hurts, but it's for good, to purify us, to cleanse us. But the deeper truth here is Isaiah 53:5, which says this, Isaiah 53:5, he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquity, The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. So the ultimate cleansing and healing and purification happened because Jesus took the blows, that he took the stripes, that he took our place so that we could have his.
By Jesus' stripes, we're healed. We're forgiven if we're willing to come to him. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can find more information about being forgiven of your sins on the God's Plan page at learnthewordradio.com. That's learnthewordradio.com. And we're going to continue on into Proverbs 21 tomorrow. So be sure to join us as we continue to learn the Word.